It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about Forgejo. Now, out of the gate, if I say this as Forgejo or Forgejo, forgive me. I live in an area where it is a very heavy Spanish-speaking population. I'm very, very close to Mexico on the United States side of the border. So sometimes I see this and it makes me want to say Forgejo or Forgejo, but it is Forgejo. Okay, I'm pretty sure it's meant to be forge and then like coffee, because where Forgejo started was with a project called Gitea. So Git and T. So in this case, it's Forge and Joe. Now you might be asking, what is this? You haven't even told us what this is. And what this is a repository option for keeping up with your code or any other thing. There's so many other uses for it. Don't just stop because I said code right now. But Forgejo was branched or forked off of Gitea when the Gitea members or maintainers decided to go in some directions that the community didn't like. And that's the great thing about open source software is, if you are enjoying a project and then that project starts making decisions that you're not enjoying and you bring that up with them and they say, yeah, we're going to go this direction anyways. That's okay. That's up to them. It was their project to start with, but you also have the option to fork that code and create your own version and then start your own version that makes you happy, as does everyone else out there. That's the most incredible thing about open source software. Forgejo is a fork of Gitea. So it really is kind of the true story behind where open source is meant to go and meant to be. Now you might be asking, well, what is this good for? You're telling me it's about code, and truly it is. So this is based on Git. Now there are other types of repository and versioning systems out there. There's Bitbucket and there's SVN, and there's all kinds of different things that can work with this type of thing. But Forgejo is really a nice front end that helps you get things done from a Git perspective and see how it functions and works. So you might not be a person who codes, but you might be somebody who keeps tutorials for yourself or for other people. You might be somebody who keeps instructions for yourself or for other people. You might be somebody who says, you know what, I've got a community and we keep up different news articles or blog posts or things of interest. You might be somebody who says, I just want to keep track of the things that I enjoy, a list or a set of lists, but I want to have some versioning and some revision control over that so that if something gets changed and I need to go back, I can do that easily. And there's plenty of tools out there. This is just one of them, but I wanted to introduce it. And it's a really great way to keep things like Markdown. Maybe you want to make a bunch of Markdown files that you can look at on a browser and have it actually format that Markdown for you. One of the cool things about things like Forgejo and Gitea and GitHub and GitLab is they actually have places where you can start a repository and then have that exposed at an actual website. So a lot of the instructions you see out there for these open source projects, if you ever look, they say like github.io or gitlab.io or something like that. Forgejo has this functionality as well, where you can actually generate a website off of your Forgejo install and use that as documentation. Maybe you're just using it as a blog. Maybe you're using it as something else, but it's a really cool use of something that you're already wanting to use for keeping track of those revisions and merging in changes. As you build a community, if your community is going to contribute to a project, this is the type of thing you might want to use. It does not have to just be for code. So today I'm going to show you how to get Forgejo up and running, show you some of the basics of the interface and getting things set up, and then let you guys run with it. It shouldn't be a very long video. In fact, my intro is probably longer than most of the rest of the video, but that's okay. I want you to understand what it is and why it might be useful to you, because I know a lot of people look at something like this and they go, oh, well, I'm not a developer. I don't need this. I think this is a really awesome tool for people who are non-developers or developers. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to all of my patrons out there on Patreon. Your continued support really means the world to me. I know that I don't get to tell you in a way that just helps you really understand what it means, but it does. I recently went through a loss in my family. It was a very hard time. I haven't put out a video in several weeks, and knowing that you guys were still there and hanging in there, man, you don't understand what that means to somebody who just does this for the love of it, but you know, so much, it means so much, and it keeps me going with these kind of projects, and it helps me get back to these kind of projects when I have a hardship like that. So thank you. For everybody who does buy me a beer, buy me a coffee over at PayPal as a one-off, man, I love that. Thank you so much. I really try to say thank you, but PayPal has something weird where it doesn't let me message a lot of you, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if you have a block or they have a block or I have a block. I don't know what's happening, but I try to send you a message and it'll just tell me you can't message this person for some reason. So I want to say thank you and make sure that you know that I see it and I appreciate it, and I really do thank you for it. For everybody who subscribes over YouTube, thank you. You're helping the channel grow. You're making a difference because other people can find amazing open source solutions to a lot of the things they didn't realize were out there. So if you haven't done so, go down and click on that subscribe button. Click on the little bell icon so you get notifications about new great open source software when I put out new videos. And give this video a thumbs up if you like it. It really helps out with the metrics and the algorithms and everything else that goes on YouTube. Without further ado, let's get into Forgejo. So as we're getting into this, one of the things I want to point out is I'll have these links in the show notes in the description, but if you go over to the Forgejo project, they actually use their own project for their code repository, which is pretty great. It lets you see a lot of what's going on with Forgejo, and if you've ever been to GitHub or GitLab, you kind of understand what's happening here. So you can have a repository, and you can have a project. So this is the project name, I believe, and this is the repository name, and this is probably the project owner as well. But it's Forgejo/Forgejo. If you had a project and your name was Mike, and that's what you set up for the system, and you made a repository about dog food, then it might be Mike/dog food. I just want you to understand that that's what that means. Some of the nice things is if you follow a project and you want to know like when they're doing releases and stuff, it's got this really nice RSS feed that you can go and copy the link and subscribe to it in your RSS feed reader, and you'll get updates about that. Now in my own project that I call GetMy, I've used this so that when I post my release notes, it automatically feeds into my application. So if you're running the application, you'll see a giant green area that says, hey, there's a new version. Now you can dismiss that without updating, but I want you to know, like, I put out an update so that you can go and update the system if you want to. I'm sure it's pretty awful because I need to resize it, but other than that, I mean, I love that there's an RSS feed here. I'm using GitLab, but I really like Forgejo. I may move my stuff over to it. I haven't decided yet. It's not that I don't like GitLab. I just think Forgejo is really awesome, and being self-hosted is pretty great. Over here, you can become a watcher. So if you just want to watch a project, you can do that. If you want to star a project, that just tells you like how much people like it. So you can see this one's got 2.5 thousand stars, and considering they run it on their own software, that's pretty great. I mean, if they were over on GitHub, it might even be bigger than that. Forks. So this is how many people have forked the Forgejo project. So just like Forgejo forked the Gitea project, that's how many people have forked it. So you're putting it out there for other people if you allow it to be a publicly accessible project. Now that's up to you when you run something like Forgejo. You keep everything private if that's what you want. It's really kind of a great thing where you've got that balance. So down here you can see how many commits, how many branches. So all these things are kind of more code-based things, but they can be very useful. So commits are, somebody made a change and they committed it, and then we pulled that in potentially. And you can see how many times people have made changes. So as you're, again, thinking about a community project where you're trying to get something going, and you want to see where changes are happening or how many changes are happening, it just lets you know like how active is the project, what's going on. The other thing is you can look over here. 16 hours ago was the last change. Yesterday. So you can see some that are like last month. You might go, well, what's going on with that? It just may be that those files don't need to be changed right now. They may get changed over time, but they just didn't have to be changed for whatever updates this person was doing that's committing these things more recently. Here you can grab the link to go and pull down the code or check out the code if you want to. It's very straightforward to get these things done. And then over here you've got these the size of the project. So it's about 221 megabytes. This blows me away, and I know this is going to sound crazy and it's going to make me sound really, well, it's going to age me for sure. My first computer that I got when I graduated high school in 1992 had 2 megabytes of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive. 40 megabytes, okay? Not terabytes, not gigabytes, megabytes. And when I got that computer and told one of my uncles who'd been using computers for years that it had a 40 megabyte hard drive, he laughed. He says, you're never going to fill that up. What in the world are you going to store on such a huge hard drive? And look at us today. This is just the project. It's 221 megabytes for one piece of software. So times change, understand that, but it does make me laugh a little bit. You do have issues, so people can make, can create an issue and say, hey, there's something wrong. If there's something wrong with your website, maybe they want to tell you about it. Pull requests, this is where somebody says, I made a change and I'd like you to pull it in. This is where you get the chance to check it before you pull that code in. People can't just Wild West kind of throw stuff in there without you knowing about it. This is your list of releases, so you can go check out the releases. This is how many packages there are that go with the release, and you can see activity and all kinds of really cool stuff. So I just wanted to kind of point out, these guys use their own system, which is really awesome. I think that's great. So what I'm going to do, this is my virtualization system. So I have multiple little servers over here in the background, and they all run different applications. And one of my servers is called DS3. Don't even remember why I called it DS3. Digital Server 3, I don't remember. But it runs a bunch of little applications, and these IP addresses are from the Docker containers that are running. So I'm just going to add Forgejo to that. Now, in the instructions, in my show notes, I will have more details about how to set up a virtual machine, how to set up a server, whatever you're trying to do, as well as how to install Docker. If you don't know what Docker is, it is just a virtual machine system that creates really tiny, efficient virtual machines. You can do everything inside of a Docker container that you can do inside of any other virtual machine if you understand how Linux works. Most Docker containers are based on some kind of Linux because it's very stable and it's very small. Just understand that. But getting Forgejo up and running once you have Docker and that stuff installed is easy, and I just don't want to spend time on that. I spend time on it in a lot of videos, but this video we're just going to kind of move forward here. So I'm going to open up my terminal. I'm already SSH'd into my DS3 machine, and I've created a folder called Dockers and a folder inside of that called Forgejo. So if I go back one level inside of the Docker folder, if I do ls, you can see here's what I run. I'm running Invoice Ninja, Metabase, Pixar, and Write Freely. So I've done videos on all of these in the past. Here's Forgejo. It's a new folder, so I'm just going to cd back into it. And if I do an ls, there's nothing there. If I do an ls-a, there's nothing there. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a compose file. And this compose file is basically kind of the instructions of how we actually get this to run and pull down what we need. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit here on my notes so that I can grab my compose file. And this is just my generic compose that I will paste out there for you guys as well. And I'm going to copy that. And we're just going to do nano. This is just a text editor. Feel free to use whatever text editor you want. Compose.yaml. That opens up my file. It's empty. So I'm just going to do Control-Shift-V, like Victor, to paste in the code that I just copied. I'm going to go back to the top and we'll go through this and talk about what this says. So first, it's going to create a network called Forgejo for the Docker container to use, and it's not an external network, it's an internal network just for the containers inside of this service to communicate with. So nothing to be worried about there, that's just all it says. The services we're going to create are called server, so this will be the Forgejo server, and you can change this to say Forgejo-server if you want to, if that's more clear, it's fine. The image is going to use codeberg.org/Forgejo/Forgejo, and it's set at 11 right now. As they put out updates, you would need to come and kind of update this version, but I'm going to leave it at 11 just for our purposes. When you go to look this up, see if 11 is still the newest version. You might want to update if it's got a newer one out there. And I'll show you how to go see whether there's a newer one or not. So in fact, here, let's do this. We'll highlight this right here, and we'll go look real quick. Let's just make sure. Control-Shift-C to copy that. Let's go back to our system and we'll just paste this in. And it brings us right back to the project we were in. So we can go here to releases, I believe. That doesn't mean that this is the tags that we're going to get, but here's a tag for version 12.0.1. It looks like it's stable, so maybe we can just switch our tag to 12. There's a 12 right there. There's 11. So we've got a lot of different ways that we can do this stuff. And yeah, so you kind of get the idea that, oh, okay, I see how that works. Now, if we go back to the code page, they have instructions as well in their README. And if we go down here, there's a bunch of information. So let's see if we can get to the instructions for setting it up. They have docs, I think. Let's go look at their docs. Let's look at their docs, and let's go over here to installation and with Docker. And we'll see if they've updated this. See, they've still got 11 listed, but I bet we could switch it to 12 and get the newest thing. So let's try it. If it fails, we can always switch it back to 11. That's the great thing about it. So let's change that to 12. The container name is going to be Forgejo. We've got a couple of things. Now, this is asking for the UID and GID of the user that you're logged in as. So if you're not sure, because it's going to default to 1000, if you're not sure what that is, you can just do Control-O to save any changes you made. Just exit the editor real quick, and you're just going to do ID and hit Enter. And you can see here, here's my UID 1001, that's for Brian, and my GID is 1001. So you can see that these are my IDs, and I know I can go in there and use that number and have it be accurate. So we'll just go right back in with nano compose.yaml. So I have 1001 already. In my show notes, that's what I'll have. You may need to change it to 1000. Check what your ID is going to be. Forgejo database is MySQL, and it's going to run on a port right here. And this DB is telling it, hey, use the service down here called DB. So that's what that's referring to. Then we've got the database name Forgejo. The database user is Forgejo. That's fine. Feel free to use those. And then we've got a database password. So we want to set up something that's going to have a long, strong password. So that's why I have that in those kind of less than, greater than signs. So I'm going to erase that. I'm going to save just to have it out of the way. We'll go create it here in just a minute. We'll keep going for now. The networks are going to use that Forgejo that we created up at the top. It's always going to restart. So I'm going to change this. I don't like always. I like unless stopped. Okay. We're going to create some volumes. So the first one is going to be inside of the current folder. That's what the // means. And it's going to create another one called Forgejo. And it's going to be mounted to the inside of the container at /data. So I'm going to change this to Forgejo data just to keep it clear. The Etsy time zone, we don't want to change that. You don't want to change the local time one either. The port. So it's going to map port 3000 to port 3000. If 3000 is already in use for some reason on your system, you can change the left side port mapping. You can change this to 3007. Let's just try that. It's also going to map port 222 to port 22 because 22 is already a port that's in use on your system by SSH, most likely. So in this case, they're just making it 222. Feel free to change this to another port number if you want to on the left side. Just don't ever change the right side unless you are a developer and you know what you're doing. Now this tells us it depends on the DB service, which is right here. So we're about to get into the database service. It's going to use MySQL 8 right here, which is okay. Again, restart always I'm not a fan of, so let's do unless stopped. The MySQL root password will create a separate password for this one versus the other one. Okay. And then I try to give you some instructions on how to generate this password, so I'll kind of show you out here or somewhere. I've got it. Let's see. And I'm just telling you, this has to match the one up above in the other section. This one that says MySQL password has to match the password that we create up there in the other section. So just be aware of that. We'll save. We'll just keep going. The database is Forgejo, or Forgejo. I told you I was going to do that. Forgejo, and the MySQL user is Forgejo, which is matching up top. That's great. The network's Forgejo, and we're going to create a volume called MySQL inside of the current folder. / MySQL means inside of the current folder. And it's going to map to var lib MySQL in the container, which is what we want. So we've saved our changes. We'll save them one more time with Control-O, and we'll exit with Control-X. And now we're going to use OpenSSL, RAND, which is random, dash, base 64, and then we're going to create a 32-bit password. We're going to do it one more time. So I'm just going to hit the up arrow. And we've got two passwords there that we can use. Now, I'm not sure MySQL does well with pluses and equal signs, so we'll replace any kind of weird characters, the / also. It may do fine, but we'll replace it with some letters because these are just randomized things anyway, so we can pick whatever we want. So I'm just going to copy this first one. This is the one I'm going to use for my root password. So I'm going to just do Control-Shift-C. I'm going to go back into my compose file. I'm going to go all the way down to that DB section. And right here where it says root password, I'm going to paste that in, but I'm going to replace that equal sign with a 3. I'm going to replace this plus sign with a 6. And I'm going to replace this / with a 7. And you could use letters as well. You don't have to use all numbers, but I'm going to just save that. And I'm going to exit one more time. And I'm going to grab this second one that we created right here. And this is going to be my database password. So I'm just going to do Control-Shift-C. And we're going to go back in and update these. So we'll go right here. where it says password, and we're going to Control-Shift-V to paste that in. Now again, I'm going to get rid of that equal sign. I'll put a Y, and we'll go get rid of this slash, and I'll put a N, and we'll go get rid of this plus, and I'll put a capital W just to show you that you can use letters as well. And you can use a mixture, it's up to you. This is very random, so don't worry that you're seeing these things. I'm going to destroy this after we're done. Control-Shift-C to copy that. And now I'm going to go down here to the other spot in the DB service, and I'm going to paste it in for the other password. So now that I've made those changes, I want this password here to match this password up here. Okay, that's very important. Now we've got everything done. We're going to save with Control-O and enter and exit with Control-X. And now we're going to do docker space compose pull. This will check that we don't have any YAML errors, and it'll also pull down the containers that we need for the database and for the server. All right, that finished. Let's just clear out the terminal so you can see what I'm doing. Now we're going to bring this up using docker compose up-d 2 ampersands docker compose logs-f. What this says is use Docker Compose to bring up the service, run it in the background detached, and then show me the logs and follow them once it's up and running. So we're going to hit enter. We're going to let it start up. Now it's throwing out a lot of log output. All I'm doing is watching over here to see if I see anything that makes me think error. Those warnings are okay. We usually don't have to worry about the warnings too much. But as long as I don't see anything that says error, something broke, we're usually all right. Once the logs kind of slow down, we should be good. So I'm just going to hit Control-C to stop following the logs. You might have to hit it a couple of times. And then we're going to go and actually get set up to look at the application in the browser. This video is sponsored by me. That's right. Did you know that I wrote a novel? I did. And it's a science fiction novel. It follows a guy named Dave, who's a pretty normal guy with a normal job, who happens to fall into a little bit of a less normal job, but doesn't realize it. He goes on some incredible adventures. He has some really cool things that he has to get done. It's just a passion project. I think you're going to love it. It's an action. It's an adventure. It's just so much fun. I understand if you don't want to do Patreon or PayPal, but maybe you'd like to get something out of some money that you're donating back to me. So by buying a book, you're paying me back, and at the same time, you're getting something out of it. You can jump over to Amazon. I'll have links in the description. You can jump over and get the ebook, the paperback, or the hardcover. I'll have links for as many countries as I can get links for, so no matter where you are, you can get a copy of the book. It is English only. It has not been translated. I just do want to put that out there, but I hope you'll get it. I hope you'll enjoy it, and let me know that you enjoyed it as well. Now let's get back to the program. All right, let's go over to our browser. I've opened up a new tab. I'm going to put in the IP address of the server that I used to set up Forgejo. So I'm going to do 192.168.10.129. You would put in, of course, the IP address of the server you're setting it up on. I'm going to put a colon, and then I'm going to put in 3007 because that's the external port that I'm using to get to the application. Remember, we changed that on the left side. So I'm going to hit enter. We're going to be brought to the Forgejo setup screen. Now, I'm going to zoom this up a little bit for you guys, but has my SQL. This is correct as far as DB:3306. We want to leave that. Username, we left it as Forgejo, and the database name we left as Forgejo. But this password it's filling in, I'm not sure is the right password. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back over here, and I'm just going to do cat compose.yaml. I'm going to grab this password here that we created. It's the one that we want. It's the MySQL password. Control-Shift-C to copy. I'm going to go back over here and paste it in just to make sure it's the right one. We'll continue down. You can change this title, so I'm going to make this OSIA, which is open source is awesome. And here I will change it to the one that I've used before, which is beyond commercial, we open. All right. I'm going to leave these paths. I'm going to leave this as Git. I'm going to leave the IP address. Now, if you're setting up your system and you want to use something like forge.migratedomain.com, you should go set up your reverse proxy to point to this ahead of time and then actually access this page through that URL, and it'll auto detect that and fill it in. If not, if you're already here and you're like, well, I'll do it in a little bit, that's fine. Just make sure to type in forge.migratedomain.com here or whatever you're going to put. Okay, make sure you've got the right domain. Here we're going to leave this as 22 because this is talking about the internal port, and 3000 it's also talking about the internal port. But you see here for the base URL it already grabbed :3007, and here is the IP address. Now, if you see a port number and you've already set up a URL and a reverse proxy, then something's wrong, so fix that. But you want to make sure that this is going to go to the right place to get you to the page where you want to see things. We're going to leave this one alone. Disable self-registration. Completely up to you. If you want to allow people to register themselves for your site, you can. You would uncheck this box to do that. And then get updates about things. I'm going to leave that checked because I want to know when there's updates. Then you have your email settings. So if you want to set up email, which I did on my regular site, you would set this up with your SMTP host, which is usually something like, mail.google.com or smtp.google.com if you're using Gmail. Now you need to know how to set up Gmail. It's a whole separate thing, but I use my own system from Purely Mail, so it's smtp.purelymail.com. Here the port number is 587 for Purely Mail because they use TLS, which is awesome. And then the send mail as. So you can set up a special account if you use something like Purely Mail where it's like forged at mygreatdomain.com. And then down here you would set up forge at mygreatdomain.com and the password for that user that you set up with Purely Mail. Here, require email confirmation to register. I would highly recommend that. And then here, enable email notifications. This is up to you, but it does help you kind of understand what's happening. Next, you've got some other options here that you can go in and set up. These are not things you have to do, but they're good things to know about. I didn't change any of these options that I remember. Everything's set. OpenID. If you are going to allow registration, I do recommend turning on the enable CAPTCHA so that people have to get through a little bit more trouble to get signed up. And then require people to sign in to view the instance content. So if you're setting this up as a private site for a private group and you don't want other people to be able to see what's on it, you would want to check this box. If, however, you're trying to be open about things, then you don't have to check it and everybody can just see it. They just can't do anything with it unless they create an account, all those things. Hide email addresses by default. I would say check this. The reason is you want to have privacy on your site. Okay, let people decide if they want to give their email addresses out. You don't have to show them. So you could check that box. Okay. Let's see. Allow creation of organizations by default is fine. Allow time tracking. That's fine. Nothing to change on these settings here. And then down here is the most important part. You need to set up your admin user. So I'm going to set mine up and I'll set up a password, which that thing really wants me to use Bitwarden, but I'm just going to type one in for now. And we're just going to click on this button that says install. It's going to start the process, and you can see that right here, and then it's going to change the screen in just a second. You don't need to click it twice. Just be patient, give it a second to do its job. You're going to see the logo. It's going to say loading. It might take a few seconds to a minute, just depending on your resources, but you see pretty quickly it jumped me right into the system. So let's go through a few things on the actual setup and layout. So here you can see I'm logged in as Brian. I can switch dashboard content. I can see myself. Okay, nothing special there. Over here you've got notifications if any come in, and then over here you've got the ability to add a new repository, a new migration from a repository that exists, or a new organization. So organizations are ways that you can separate your repositories a little bit more. So it's up to you to create those or not create those if you want to. It's not required, but depending on what you're using this for, it might be useful. So if you have a big organization, like I work for a company that has multiple products, each of those products could be a separate organization. So if they each have access to their code, but not the other product's code, and you don't get things confused and mixed up. Those could also just be separate repositories, but each product might need multiple repositories. So sometimes setting up organizations is really useful. Just depends on you and what you need. Over here, if we click down, we can see that we can go set up our profile. So let's just click there. We'll kind of see what they've got. So first thing is, what repos should we search? You can set that up if you want to. You can go here and set up your avatar, and you can see my email address and when I joined. You can see any projects that are associated to me. You can see any packages that I might have. You can also see any public activity that I've done. And finally, you can see if I've got anything starred. Now, once we jump down from there, you can see start again. You can see my subscriptions. So subscriptions can be really useful if you wanted to subscribe to certain repositories, things like that. The settings is a really powerful place, and you should go through this and make sure you get everything set up the way you want. So you've got your username. You can put in your full name, any pronouns you prefer, your biography about yourself, what your website link is, where you are in the world, a location. And then you can also put what kind of user visibility do you want? Do you want this to be public or do you want it to be private? hide your email address or not. So again, the individual user can choose this. It's not something you can choose. You should choose for them, in my opinion. Leave it up to you. Hide activity from the profile page. Only show pronouns to authenticated users. Again, completely up to you. But then you click on the update profile button to get those changes. Down here you've got use custom avatar, so you can upload your avatar if you want to. So I think I've got one out here. Let me go to pictures. Oh, it's in Nextcloud, I bet. Let's go to Nextcloud and pictures, and there's my South Park character, and I will upload my avatar. And if you look now, there's me. I look kind of like Butters, to be honest, but that's okay. Next, you can go to your account. You can put in your current password to change your password by adding a new password, of course. You can manage your email address. You can add more. You can take some out, up to you. And you can delete your account. This is red on purpose. Be very careful. This is telling you, like, hey, if you do this and you put in your password, you delete your account, it's gone. They're not going to be like, oh, sorry, let us help you get it back. You did it. It's gone. Appearance. Again, you can choose kind of how things look. You can look at your default language. You've got a lot of really great settings in here. I again suggest you go through here and see what's, what they are. So you've got reference comments. You can do labels, milestones, assignees. So this is the comment types that you'll be shown inside of issue pages. It says checking label, for example, removes all added/removed comments. I don't know what that means, but okay. Security. Enable two-factor authentication. Highly recommend, if you're going to continue using their authentication, that you enable two-factor and get it set up. But you can set up Forgejo to use OpenID Connect with something like Authentic, Keycloak, a lot of different providers. So keep that in mind. If you want to have a nickname, you can go through here and set up the nickname for your security keys just to help you identify those things. Applications. So if you're going to use an application like VS Code or VS Codium, if you're going to use any kind of applications that might need to access the repositories, then you want to create a token. And you want to create an application token that you can use for those applications. So you want to go through this area right here, which says applications, and then you've got access tokens. Further down, you've got authorized OAuth 2 applications. So again, you can authorize those things. Manage your OAuth 2 applications. So you can go in here and actually manage those things. You've got SSH and GPG keys, so you can go set up your keys. You've got add-ons, so you might have runners. So runners are things that run some code automatically whenever you take certain actions. You might have secrets that you're storing, and you might have variables that you're storing in the system. Packages. So again, lots of packages. Cargo registry index, a Chev registry, so you could go through and kind of set these things up. Webhooks are super useful depending on what you're trying to do with them. So if you had like a channel on a chat site like Rocket Chat or Mattermost, if it supports webhooks, you could have certain actions that send something off to a webhook. So we just did a release, we created a package, we pushed code, whatever. You can have those things go out and do things with your webhooks. Pretty great. Here's your organizations list if you've created one, and then here's your repositories list if you've created some, and finally here's your blocked users if you've had to block any users. Alright, I think we've gone through all of the settings, everything like that. So if we keep going, you've got the help section where you can get more information. You've got the site administration, which is again a really useful page and you should go through and understand. But here you've got delete all unactivated accounts. So you may get a bunch of accounts that just never get activated because bots are trying to create accounts. If you open up registration, you can go through and just clear those out and delete them. Delete all repositories and archives. Kind of dangerous. Be careful when you do this. Or all repositories archives. You're just deleting the archives of repositories, but if you get a bunch built up at some point, you might want to delete those. Delete all repositories missing their Git files. Again, probably useful to clean that up. Garbage collect all repositories. Update the .ssh authorized key file with Forgejo SSH keys. I almost said it again. Same thing, and so yeah, you've got a lot of stuff, okay? You've got a lot of actions you can take, and you've got a lot of details about the system that you can check out, so, go kind of check those things out. Identity and access, all right. Authorization sources. Now, this is where you set up something like Authentic or Keycloak or somebody else, so you can add, and you can see here there's LDAP, so you can set that up, and then there's LDAP Simple Auth. I think they have one specific to free IPA, but I don't really remember. There's SMTP and OAuth 2. If you click OAuth 2, you'll see the authentication name. So you could just call this Authentic. Okay? And then you're going to go down here and you've got a bunch. You've got Azure AD, Azure AD v2, Bitbucket, Discord, Dropbox, Facebook. Let's just keep going. Gitea, GitHub, GitLab, Google, Mastodon. These are all in order, okay? Microsoft Online, Nextcloud, OpenID Connect is the one you would want to pick, I believe, for authentic. You've got Twitter and Yandex. So if I pick OpenID Connect, it's going to ask me for a client key, client secret, the icon URL if there is one, OpenID Connect auto discovery URL, and that's really the last thing you actually need in here. So once you've got that, it's going to go out and actually get set up. So you would go set it up on the authentic side, make sure you paste in those secrets, keys, and that URL. And this thing's ready to go. You can log in using authentic. You can do the same thing with KeyCloak and all these other ones that are here. So there's a bunch. If you look at LDAP2, you got LDAP2 and start TLS, and you've got unencrypted. Or that's LDAP, sorry. And then if we do LDAP, there we go, LDAP2, you've got LDAP-S and start TLS, and then unencrypted. And you would, of course, change the name based on what you're picking. And then finally, you've got SMTP. So if you're going to do that, it's just plain login, that kind of thing. Now, these are all authentication processes. I don't know if you'd use SMTP, but there you go. I'm going to just say I don't want to do that. I'm going to leave the page. So we're going to go to organizations. Again, you've got your organization management, user accounts, again, and then user emails. As we go down, we've got code assets, packages, and repositories. Really big things on these types of servers. In this case, your packages might be I'm pushing out a change to my book that I'm writing, or I'm pushing out a change to some other thing, my web page that I'm creating. And then the repository is where you keep all those changes. You do some integrations, so there's applications, and you can see there's a few here. So we've got T, Get Credential Manager, Get Credential OAuth. So a few things there that you can utilize. You've got webhooks, which we talked about earlier. You've got the actions. You've got configuration, so you can go here to your summary page to see all the stuff that's already set, and then you can go back to your settings. So this just takes us back to the settings page. So we've got a few things here: pictures and avatar configuration to disable Gravatar, enable federated avatars, and then the repository if you're going to allow avatars from anywhere. You have system notices that you can also create and put out there for people to see, so be aware of that. And then monitoring. So you've got stats, cron tasks, queues, and stack trace. So you've got a lot of really, really awesome tools. So I'm going to go back to the main page here. You can see I've got no activity, and it's just because I haven't added anything yet. If you want to create a repository, it's not hard. Once your user is logged in, you can just go up here and do, I want a new repository. You just give the repository a name, my special video project. How about scripts? I don't use scripts. I should, but I can't read them, so what's the point? Make repository private. That's up to you. If you want to leave it open, leave it open. If you want to make it private, make it private. You own this server. It's awesome. Enter a short description. These are the scripts I should use, but don't. How's that? And I put the apostrophe in the wrong place. There we go. Use a template. Completely up to you. You don't have any templates set. Don't worry about it. No big deal. Initialize the repository. All this means is when you do this, it's going to create a README and do a couple of things with Git for you. It's useful. Just go ahead and do it. It's not going to hurt anything. So you can say initialize it and start a Git ignore template. I don't really need one, but you can just pick one if you really want to use one. I don't know. These are all the different languages that you could be using. And then down here, what kind of license are you going to use? So you can kind of pick from different licenses, Apache 2, MIT. I mean, you've got all of the different licenses, and you can go all the way up to GPL, BSD. I mean, you can see there's Creative Commons licenses, just tons of stuff. So again, it's always good to put a license around your work, especially if it's open to the public, so that they understand what the license is for that. And then if you want to expand some advanced settings, you can do that. Select a label. What's the formatting? And the default branch name is main in this case, so make a repository a template. You could make a template out of this repository and then use that for a template next time so that you don't have to do all this work again. Completely up to you how you do this. So let's go here. We'll leave this. In fact, we'll just uncheck this just to make it easy. And let's just do this, create repository. Oh, it needs something. Oh, it wants it to be one thing. Something like that, I bet. No spaces or something. Yeah, there we go. All right, so you can see it gets Brian my special video script. So if you remember, the Forgejo is Forgejo/Forgejo. Here it's telling me, hey, you can create a new repository on the command line with this. You can push an existing repository from the command line with this. So completely up to you how you do this, but this is where you would go and grab this. And on my local network, I can grab this and just pull it down to my local machine and then start working on it and then use this to push it back to my machine. I would probably want to set up my SSH keys and do it this way. It's a little bit easier than doing the HTTP stuff, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, you've got all the tools here at your disposal. You've even got a wiki. So if you want to document things, a wiki is a great place to do that, and keeping your repository and your wiki together really helps people who are trying to understand what's going on in your project. You've got the issues page where people can create issues. I mean, you've got everything that you would expect out of a system like this, except now you are the one running it and you are the one in charge of it, and it's very lightweight and easy. A long time ago I did a video on how to set up GitLab. GitLab was pretty complicated and it's a pretty heavy application. So definitely, if you've been looking to do something like this, I recommend checking this out. It's really nice, and I think it's a really cool way to kind of host your code, your blog, your whatever you're trying to write and keep revisions of and keep track of. I think it's a great way to do it. I know that was a ton to go through, but get out there and try out Forgejo. Let them know that you appreciate the project. Go over to their site, give them a star, leave a comment to them that says, hey, we love this, thank you so much. Just, always thanking people for the work that they do is important. So we definitely should get out there and thank these guys because they're doing this out of the bottom of their hearts, loving what they're doing. So let them know that you appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along in the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.